Thank you very much for that excellent introduction. Now I'm curious about the three plants we'll be discussing today: Caapi, Guayusa, and Bobinsana. How did you come across the knowledge and information about these three plants? Can you share us the journey that led you to their remarkable properties and the understanding of their healing potential?
Yes, sure. It's not about me, the meeting, but I love to share. I'll try to keep it short. I come from a family of doctors and psychiatrists. My dad only used to use natural medicine. So this was for me the normal way how you treat people when they have a problem. We would have to practice in our house, so all the patients would be there. And it was in a time when alternative doctors were not so popular yet. So he did not have the money, basically, to have a whole separate practice. So it was at home. I was there all the time, seeing what happened, which of course inspired a lot. I knew this was what I wanted to learn and grow into. And skipping a whole lot of stories, I thought I go study biology, which I did and was great. But it's not about plant medicine. It's about the genetics of fruit flies, the mating behavior of sperm whales, the interconnection of ecosystems, and it's all very, very interesting, but it wasn't about plant medicine. So I thought, you know what, I go to the jungle and find the people that, in my opinion, still know something about these things, because there was no study. We spent many years there in different places, learning from different people, their traditional ways. Still have a bit of biology background. It was nice to have that knowledge too, about the human body and how that all works. And then the medicine actually kicked me back home and said, well, you have a lot of info at home too. So now it's time to research there. And I started researching the plant medicine in Europe, basically, and opened a laboratory, started to make plant extracts, because I realized that we can have a lot of knowledge. But if you don't know if this is the right product, you don't know if you did a right diagnose, or if the product is not so good. So I started to make my own products to be sure where it comes from, what the quality is. And that got out of hand. People like Philip wanted to buy it, and I had to buy a bigger pan and a bigger lab. And then I started running laboratories. So I have now a laboratory in Switzerland, Amsterdam, and in Ecuador.
Thank
And we
you,
work
Aldo.
with therapists that give all the feedback about the plants. So that's in short.
Thank you, Aldo, for sharing your fascinating insights. Now I'd like to explore a concept that might be unfamiliar to some of our viewers. In the practice of plant medicine, there is a tradition known as a dieta, where individuals immerse themselves in a deep connection with a specific plant. Could you enlighten us on the concept of dieta and shed some light on how many dietas one can undertake at a time? How does this process contribute to our understanding and relationship with the healing properties of plants?
Well, one, exactly because of that. When you take more, you might get, it becomes unclear what plant is actually doing what. And so we always do a dieta, one at a time. And yes, we call it dieta because it's not just about the food, which would be a diet. It's a whole thing. Working with this one plant, as Philip said, and besides the food, restrain yourself from social media, certain activities, certain people, be a bit isolated, be a bit the hermit, so to say. And they believe that at a certain point, it really clicks. So you work with this plant, you feel it very strong at a certain point. If the things go right, it becomes unmistakable what this plant spirit does to you, how it makes you think, how it makes you feel. At a certain point, you might even feel your organs moving. Think, oh, wow, I really feel activity in the liver or the stomach. And at a certain point, there's what you can almost call a breakthrough. You just become one with this plant. You feel it in every cell of your body. And in the jungle, they say that's when the song comes. And when you've learned the song, which can be really a song as in music, but the song can also be an understanding, which is the same in a certain sense. It became part of you. And now you truly know this plant and can work with it. Recognize in people if they might need this frequency or not, which goes way beyond philosophizing. It does this for you, it does this for you. And we can all experience the plants like that in a much deeper way than just taking them, it makes me feel up, or this, or that. It can go so deep that by working with a plant like that, can completely change the way you look into the world and interact with the world. Aside from your pain body, it can make you see things in a much different way and more clear. Hence you interact differently, hence you attract different people, and your whole reality changes. And that's where the true plant alchemy takes place. It's only at that level that it really changes your perception of the world, and that in itself changes your whole reality. The alchemy is not in, ooh, I made it so nice, or I call it elixir, or it sounds so fancy, or I do it accordance to the stars. These are all part of it, but the real alchemy is becoming part of that plant and use it as an ally to create a new reality. And the only way to reach that, to achieve that, is by working with them in this way.
Thank you, Aldo, for sharing your fascinating insights. Now, I have the pleasure of introducing another esteemed expert joining us today, Philip. Philip is widely known in the herbal world and brings a wealth of knowledge and expertise from his work in Amsterdam. Philip, please proceed with the conversation.
So I don't see any new question arise. I think you just wanted to hop over to the one of my favorite plants, the Banisteropsis Caapi, also known as the ayahuasca vine. I think many people in attending this meeting have a strong connection with her. So we are very interested in your vision and your ideas on Caapi plant. So
yes.
Yes.
So yeah, there's so many knowledge about the Caapi, as there are cultures using them in different ways, and even now so many people in the West start working with them, and they all have their own experience and their own knowledge. What we tend to oversee is as I said, the Caapi alone. It's mostly always seen as a part of the traditional brew, the ayahuasca, which for a great part is trying to look at the trauma which created our spiritual being, the trauma we could not fix at a certain time, and made a way of thinking around that to uphold ourselves in this reality, which is always a lack of energy, because you always not use that part for power. It becomes a weakness and it's quarantined. With the ayahuasca, we have the potential to dive into these things which are mostly forgotten or too scary to look at. That's why it can be a scary experience too. But besides seeing it, the real challenge is the integration, not only the acceptation of what happened, but how to transform this moment, which caused the trauma, into not costing energy, but actually giving you a power, a lesson, the wisdom that came from that. And that's the very hard part, because the way we act and the way we think is so ingrained into our mind. Our mind is literally electric circuitry. There's actual electrons going through your nerves, and they take the path of least resistance, like every electrical system. And the lucky and sad thing is that our brain strengthens these connections which are used a lot, so they become even easier to take. Hence, we start ingraining our character very deeply, and it becomes harder and harder to take a different path in our brain. The ayahuasca can show us, hey, wow, look, you've been going around this thing. Fantastic to see. But then to restructure and keep that new way of thinking, it takes a lot of input from us to actively choose, hey, I do not go into that thought pattern, but this one. And then you can keep this knowledge. You've done your homework. And only when you've done your homework, it's time to go back to the teacher. And we tend to think, wow, it's the visions and the things, and they make it clear. And they can break open your stubbornness, so to say, pierce through it with so much fanfare that it's hard to hide. But the true healing actually comes from the Caapi. Not that the chacruna is not medicinal, not at all, but the actually rewriting your patterns, that's where the Caapi comes in. And we can use this Caapi consciously to help us create these new connections and strengthen them, which can be after the ayahuasca ceremony, or just completely on its own, or even better, in combination with a certain form of therapy. It can be psychotherapy or coaching. To explain a bit more, it's nice to go into a very old traditional use of Caapi, which is even older than the ayahuasca. They used to use Caapi to open up themselves to other plants, to actually perceive them better, to assist their dietas. They really believed it opened up. So they took the Caapi with a plant, no chacruna, just a Caapi and another plant. They also used chacruna medicinally in quite some tribes for very different things, urinary problems, for example. So it's not very hard to think one day a curandero, shaman, or herbalista took a Caapi, tried the chacruna, and had a jackpot. But even on the Caapi itself, you can have these experiences on your own neurotransmitters. Anyway, to get back to just the Caapi, what we created is a full spectrum extract of the Caapi containing all the active parts we know of. So we never know exactly what is all active. It's almost impossible. But we can say this is probably not active, like tannins, astringent parts, fats, chlorophyll, not so much in the bark. But there are a lot of groups in the plant which we are certain of they don't do much. We kept them out. And what's left, we concentrated under vacuum, so it never got heated. So you have a raw essence, that's why we call it essence, of the Caapi. And now, how can you use this Caapi efficiently? Well, the dieta first will help a lot to really experience this. First of all, it seems to get your focus of attention from your own mind and things into more of an objective role, more the role of the observer. With the Caapi, it's much easier to zoom out certain situations and see what's all happening. Meaning you're not stuck in your same pattern you're always taking. You can actually see, oh, wow, why am I attracting this kind of people all the time? Why do I react like this to that? Oh, I see I'm making a lot of trouble of this, but it's maybe not so important to give this so much focus. I think it's very important for my life, but maybe it isn't. And in this way, you could call it, although I'm almost not allowed to say, but it can be very good for things like depressions, when you're stuck in a rhythm, when you cannot get further in your life. You can take a bit of the Caapi, just a drop under the tongue, maybe 2 or 3, dissolve it. Situation becomes different. You can look at it. From there, it becomes easier to make a new decision and say, hey, no, I want to interact in this way in this situation. Still, you have to do the work. They're all allies. They're not called allies for nothing. They're not going to do it for you, but they can help it. They can help you see situations in a different way and act accordingly how you want to invent your new being, almost.